The shrine world of Gethsemane Delta slept beneath its silver clouds, a jewel of devotion orbiting a dying sun. Every night, the air was thick with incense, the hymns of pilgrims echoing across marble cathedrals, a world so steeped in faith that even the dust seemed to whisper prayers. But tonight, something tore through the fabric of heaven. Brother Archivist Marius Vallon felt the disturbance before the alarms sounded. The warp pressed against his mind like a storm against a stained glass window, whispering hunger in a language older than sin. He was in the library vaults, surrounded by relics of purity seals and tomes wrapped in chain, when the ground began to hum with unnatural resonance. His psychic wards flared blue, each rune stuttering in pain. The air rippled once, and all candles in the chamber went out at once. Outside, the bells began to ring, the kind that were only sounded for invasion or apocalypse. Pilgrims flooded into the streets, clutching icons, muttering desperate litanies. In the distance, a line of fire split the night sky open. It was not a meteor. Marius knew that instantly. The trail shimmered with shifting colors that hurt to look at, like oil on water that was somehow alive. By the time he reached the surface, the object had already struck outside the shrine precinct, a column of smoke rising into the storm clouds. Battle Sisters were already forming perimeter lines under the command of Canoness Ella Ravas, whose armor gleamed gold and crimson in the firelight. She turned as Marius approached, her eyes bright with fury and faith. "You felt it too, Brother Archivist?" He nodded, every sense alert. "It's not a demon. Not yet. But it's aware." Before she could respond, a mechanized hum cut through the noise. Inquisitor Seraphine Call arrived, her coat flaring with servo assistants and auspex lights that painted her face in cold blue. "The warp did not simply vomit debris," she said, her voice sharp as a blade. "It sent something alive. My authority supersedes yours, Canoness. The artifact is under Ordo Zeno's jurisdiction." Ellara's hand hovered near her sword. "This is a shrine world, Inquisitor. You will treat this ground with reverence." Call smiled the way a predator does when it knows no one will stop it. "Reverence won't save you if this turns out to be contagious." The argument died as the crater began to glow. The impact site pulsed with light from within, a wet, rhythmic shimmer like a heart beating beneath the surface. Steam hissed from the edges, and a sweet metallic scent filled the air. The sisters raised their bolters. Marius took a cautious step forward, his psychic barrier thrumming. The thing in the crater moved. It wasn't a creature, not yet. It was a liquid shadow, slick and reflective, spreading across the rock like ink spilled in water. Its movement had intent, curious, cautious, and hungry. Marius reached out through the warp, brushing its mind. For an instant, he saw flashes. Planets devoured, men screaming in blackness, a hunger that was both endless and afraid. The symbiote felt him too. It recoiled, then lunged toward the nearest life it could sense, a young sister whose courage outpaced her experience. She fired, bolts detonating uselessly in the air as the liquid darkness struck her, wrapping her armor in seconds. She screamed, not in pain but in shock, as her voice was swallowed by a second voice that laughed. "Contain it," Ellara shouted. Bolters roared. Fragments of the thing splattered across the crater, reforming almost instantly, drawn back to its host. Call raised her plasma pistol, but Marius stepped between her and the creature, his psychic aura flaring like a blue sun. "Stop! You'll kill her." "She's already gone," Call said, but there was calculation in her tone. Marius ignored her. He pressed his gauntlet against the possessed sister's forehead and whispered a word from the Codex Astartes, a binding oath older than most worlds. His mind plunged into hers, into the storm where the symbiote's voice echoed in chaos. "We are hunger." The words weren't spoken, they were understood inside the bones. Marius pushed back with thought and memory. "Discipline, duty, the Emperor's light. You will not consume the innocent." The creature hesitated. It didn't understand mercy, but it recognized strength. It pulled away from the dying sister and surged toward Marius instead. It struck him like a wave of cold metal and lightning. For a moment, he couldn't breathe. Every instinct screamed to fight it, but he didn't. He commanded it. His body locked. His vision blurred. The black tide wrapped around him, through him, into him. Teeth formed where his breath should have been. When his eyes opened again, they glowed white. "We feel you," the voice said inside his skull. "Strong mind. You fight well. We like this." He clenched his fist, feeling the armor shift like skin. "You serve now," he told it. "We fight for humanity." "We fight," it agreed after a pause. "We eat monsters." Call stared at him, astonished. "You just bound it." "Not bound," Marius said, his voice doubled. His own and something deeper, darker. "We made a pact." The ground trembled again. From beyond the crater came new movement. Quick, synchronized, alien. Ellora's vox crackled with urgent reports. Movement in the catacombs, tunnels collapsing, shapes emerging. Marius turned his head slightly, and both voices inside him said the same word at once. Tyranids. The first of the creatures broke through the smoke, claws gleaming wetly. Ellora ordered her sisters to form a firing line. Call's retinue fell back toward the perimeter. The sky itself seemed to pulse, red lightning crawling across the clouds. Marius felt Venom coil around his spine like a living weapon, whispering delight. "We know these. Big, fast, sharp. We like sharp." He drew his force sword. The blade hummed with psychic energy, crackling as the symbiote wrapped around it, coating it in black flame. The first Tyranid leaped, and Marius met it midair, cleaving it in half. The symbiote screamed in triumph, his armor shifting to absorb the impact. Call was shouting orders, Ellora's choir was singing their war hymns, but Marius barely heard them. The bond had solidified. The two minds moved as one. The swarm broke upon them like a tide, and together they waded into it, blade and blackness carving through alien flesh. When the last creature fell, the crater was silent except for the hiss of burning ichor. Marius stood amidst the corpses, his armor dripping with shadow that writhed before settling back into stillness. Call approached cautiously, her pistol still raised. "It responds to you," she said. "That makes you valuable. Dangerous, but valuable." Ellora wiped blood from her blade. "That thing inside you is an abomination. If you lose control—" "I won't," he said quietly, though his voice carried the echo of another being that chuckled faintly within. "We like her faith," the symbiote murmured. "It tastes clean." Marius exhaled through clenched teeth. "We'll need containment and research. The rift isn't closing, it's widening." Call turned her gaze toward the horizon, where the clouds twisted in spirals of red light. "Then we don't have much time. Whatever came through that breach, this was just the beginning." The wind howled, carrying the faint echo of something calling from the stars, a whisper only the symbiote could truly hear. Venom stirred inside Marius, shivering like a predator scenting prey. "Something else is coming," it said softly. "Something hungry." And for the first time since his initiation, Brother Archivist Marius Vallon felt fear. Dawn never truly came to Gethsemane Delta after the fall. The air remained heavy with ash and ozone, as if the sky itself hadn't recovered from what it had swallowed. The battle from the night before had left the ground cratered and slick with alien blood, and the hymns that once filled the cathedrals now sounded tired, like faith whispered through cracked lips. Marius Vallon stood at the edge of the crater where it all began, his armor half-drenched in black sheen that shifted when it breathed. The creature within him, Venom, was silent for now, a predator resting after the hunt. But beneath that silence, there was always the pulse of hunger, like a second heartbeat syncing with his own. Inquisitor Call watched him from behind a line of Mechanica servitors. "You haven't lost control yet," she said dryly. "A promising start." Marius turned, the faint shimmer of the symbiote crawling up his neck before it melted back into the armor. "You speak as if you expected me to." "I did." Call's tone carried no apology. "The Ordo Xenos expects failure first, survival second. You're defying both statistics and theology." Canoness Ellora approached, her armor still scratched from the Tyranid assault. Her gaze was hard, unwavering. "Defiance is not virtue, Inquisitor. Whatever that thing is," she looked at Marius, not quite at his eyes. "It mocks the Emperor's image every time it breathes." Before Call could retort, a tremor rippled through the ground. Everyone turned toward the horizon. The sky there shimmered faintly, the air twisting like heat haze. The rift. It hadn't closed, it was growing. Marius felt Venom stir, its whisper crawling through his mind like oil over glass. Something comes through. Big. Old. It smells like burning and screams. Call's Auspex drones launched skyward, scanning the disturbance. Static flooded her comms. The warp interference is stronger than last night. The rift is bleeding reality again. Elora crossed herself. Then the Emperor's test is not finished. Marius felt the symbiote's curiosity sharpen. We could stop it. We could eat the hole itself. You cannot devour the warp, he muttered. We can try. Call stepped closer, her voice low. What is it saying? Marius hesitated. It wants to help. Help, she repeated, as if tasting the absurdity. Marvelous. My notes will read. Subject believes parasitic xenoentity desires benevolence. Venom hissed softly in Marius's ear, unheard by the others. We don't like her. Marius ignored it, but his lips twitched despite himself. He focused on the horizon where the haze began to fracture into shards of light. The warp storm was thinning. Something was breaking through. Moments later, the clouds split with a sound like chains snapping. A pulse of psychic energy tore across the landscape, flattening banners and silencing the distant choirs. Call's retinue scrambled for cover as debris rained down. Through the glare, Marius saw it. Black armor, gilded in crimson runes, floating just above the ground. 1,000 Suns sorcerer. He landed with the arrogance of one who expected to be worshipped. His helm horns glowed faintly, and his voice carried as though spoken through the warp itself. How quaint, he said. An ultramarine playing host to a fragment of my god's art. Tell me, does it whisper sweet blasphemies in your ear? Marius felt Venom tense like a cornered animal. We know him. He smells wrong. Like mirrors and rot. Identify yourself, Call demanded, raising her plasma pistol. I am Xylarth, weaver of flesh, the sorcerer said, spreading his arms. And you, tiny pieces of a decayed Imperium, have something that belongs to me. His gaze locked onto Marius. Return the symbiote, or drown in its rebellion. Elora's sisters raised their bolters in perfect unison. The air thickened with sanctified aggression. But Xylarth didn't flinch. His fingers traced sigils in the air, and a tear opened beside him, oozing with shapes that defied geometry. From it slithered shadows that looked like venom, but wrong. Pale, translucent, whispering. Venom recoiled violently, black tendrils snapping out around Marius's armor. They're us, but dead inside. He took pieces. He made them sing for him. Call shouted. All units fire. The basilica walls flashed with the roar of gunfire, sanctified bolts slamming into the demon-spawned horrors. But for every one torn apart, 2 more emerged. The symbiote inside Marius surged forward. Desperate. Feral. Let us out, it begged. We can stop him. We must. Marius hesitated only a moment before yielding. The black tide burst from his armor, forming jagged wings of living shadow. He charged through the storm of fire and light, his sword blazing, venom roaring through his voice, a duet of fury. Xylarth met him with psychic fire. The two collided in an explosion that lit the shrine city like a second dawn. Marius felt the heat scorch his mind, but the symbiote drank it, twisting it into motion. He struck, his blade connecting with the sorcerer's ward, sparks hissing. You don't understand what you wear. Xylarth snarled. That creature was born from the Immaterium's hunger. It will devour you as it has devoured worlds. It has a will, Marius growled, pressing the attack. And it chooses. Venom's voice rose through him. Guttural, fierce. We choose him. The sorcerer faltered, his disbelief breaking the flow of his chant. Marius took the opening, slashing through his chest plate. Warp ichor spilled, boiling away into smoke. Xylarth laughed, even as his form began to fracture into motes of dust. Then you'll burn together, he hissed, vanishing into the rift's light. Silence fell. The false symbiotes dissolved into ash, leaving only the stink of warp energy. Marius dropped to one knee, Breathing hard, Venom's tendrils retracting slowly, reluctantly. Call approached, eyes wide with fascination and something dangerously close to admiration. You just fought a sorcerer of the Thousand Suns, and lived. Elora crossed herself again. He lived because the Emperor willed it, not because of that thing. Venom shifted under Marius's skin, whispering lazily. She's loud. We like her anger. Marius rose, sword still glowing faintly. This isn't over. He'll be back. Call nodded. And next time, he won't come alone. The rift is still open. We'll need to move quickly. Elora turned toward the sky, where the storm pulsed red like a wound refusing to heal. Then we'll fight until it closes. Or until we do. Marius said nothing. Deep inside, Venom was laughing softly, a sound halfway between pride and promise. And for the first time, Marius realized the symbiote wasn't just reacting to the sorcerer. It was remembering. Something was calling it from beyond the rift, something older than both of them. We're not the first, it whispered. And we won't be the last. The fires in the shrine city had burned themselves out, leaving only the scent of charred incense and iron in the wind. The streets that once carried pilgrims now lay cracked and bloodstained, a graveyard of melted armor and scorched icons. The survivors moved quietly, whispering prayers not to be heard by the gods who had already turned their faces away. Marius Valens stood on the steps of the ruined basilica, the black sheen of the symbiote rippling faintly across his armor like liquid shadow. He could still feel Xylartha's psychic stench in the air. Arrogant, bitter, unfinished. The sorcerer's words gnawed at him. It will devour you as it has devoured worlds. Venom stirred, its whisper rolling through his mind with restless energy. He lied. We don't eat everything. Just enemies. Bad ones. Mostly. Marius said aloud, his tone dry. Call turned from where she was studying the resonator schematics projected on a holoslate. Talking to it again? It never really stops talking. The Inquisitor's expression was unreadable. Good. Keep it that way. Communication means control. She flicked her wrist, and the projection shifted to display a planetary map riddled with crimson blips. We've detected new biosignatures in the catacombs below the city. Tyrannid, but mutated. The DNA patterns don't match the standard strains. Something's rewriting them. Elora, standing nearby with her armor freshly polished despite the soot around her, folded her arms. Corruption spreads faster than fire. We should purge the tunnels, collapse them if we must. Call shook her head. If Xylarth is behind this, destroying the evidence would serve him. We need to see what he's building. Her gaze flicked toward Marius. You and your partner will lead the descent. Venom's tone brightened immediately. We like tunnels. Dark. Tight. Lots to eat. Elora frowned. And if it turns on us? Marius met her eyes. Then you'll know what to do. Hours later, the descent began. The catacombs beneath Gethsemane Delta were ancient, carved before the Great Crusade, their walls etched with prayers in languages long forgotten. Torchlight flickered across bones sealed into alcoves, relics of martyrs who had died believing the Emperor would never let darkness return. The deeper they went, the louder the hum of the warp became. Marius moved first, Venom guiding his steps with uncanny instinct. The walls pulsed faintly under his gauntlet. Something alive here, the symbiote murmured. Feels like us, but broken. Starving. Elora's voice came softly from behind him. Do you feel it too, Inquisitor? Call nodded, her Auspex readings jittering with interference. Yes. And it's not static. It's rhythm. As if it's breathing. They reached a chamber that had once been a crypt. The tombs were shattered, the stone warped by heat. In the center, a figure knelt, once human, now twisted, its flesh streaked with black veins that shimmered like oil. When it looked up, its eyes were all wrong. Glossy, reflective, hungry. The thing hissed, and venom hissed back through Marius's throat. It's ours, it said, voice low, dangerous. A stolen piece. The creature lunged. Marius met it halfway, blade drawn, symbiote flaring across his armor in black tendrils. The mutant was fast. Too fast. But every movement it made, Marius anticipated. It was like fighting a warped reflection, one that moved before it thought. When his sword struck, the creature screamed, not in pain but recognition. Call fired her plasma pistol, searing through its chest. The thing convulsed, and as it fell, Marius saw something horrifying beneath its skin, a fragment of the symbiote's black essence pulsing like a second heart. It shivered, then crawled free, trying to rejoin him. Venom recoiled violently. No, not that one. It's wrong. Tainted. Marius's hand clenched as he felt the rogue fragment brush his armor. Pleading, desperate. For a heartbeat, he saw through it. Images of Xylartha's ritual circle, chains of light binding something alive, twisting it into new forms. The sorcerer wasn't just experimenting. He was breeding. Call knelt beside the corpse, scanning its remains. So the sorcerer learned to clone your symbiote. And he's feeding them to the Tyranids. Ellora's expression hardened. Then we burn them. All of them. No, Call said sharply. If he's weaponized the symbiote's regenerative matrix, destroying one host won't stop the infection. We need to cut it from the source. Venom growled, a sound that reverberated through Marius's chest. He took our blood. He wants to make a choir. They will sing for chaos. Marius rose, gripping his sword tighter. Then we silenced the choir. They pressed deeper into the tunnels. The hum became louder, forming something that wasn't quite sound, a vibration that rattled bones and thoughts alike. When they entered the final chamber, the source revealed itself, a pulsating cocoon, suspended above a pool of viscous black liquid. Within it, something massive was forming, a hybrid of Tyranid carapace and symbiote flesh, veins glowing faintly with warp light. Call's jaw tightened. The sorcerer's building a hive. Ellora lifted her weapon. Then we end it before it draws breath. Before she could fire, the cocoon cracked open. A tendril lashed out, wrapping around her arm and yanking her off her feet. Marius leapt forward, slicing through it with one strike. The creature emerged fully, a monstrous silhouette dripping black ichor, its mouth filled with rows of teeth that mirrored Venom's grin. The hybrid roared, shaking the chamber. Venom's voice rose within Marius. Half terror, half fury. That's us. That's what we could become. Marius didn't hesitate. Then we stop it. He charged, venom expanding across his armor, forming jagged claws and fanged tendrils that struck like lightning. The hybrid matched his every move, mimicking his strikes as if mocking him. Each blow echoed with psychic feedback, rattling his thoughts. He could feel it trying to reach into Venom to override it, to replace it. Call shouted over the chaos. If it links to the hive mind, it'll spread the symbiote to every Tyranid on the planet. Ellora's voice came from behind her, full of defiance. Then we make sure it never leaves this place. The canoness began to sing. Her hymn filled the chamber, a sound so pure that even the shadows recoiled. The hybrid screamed, its body rippling as the holy resonance tore through it. Venom howled inside Marius, every nerve in his body aflame. It burns. Endure it, Marius gasped, forcing himself forward. Together. He plunged his sword through the creature's chest. Venom wrapped around the blade, channeling every ounce of hatred, pain, and hunger into one final surge. The hybrid convulsed, its black veins bursting in a flood of liquid fire. It fell, dissolving into ash and smoke. Silence descended. Ellora dropped to one knee, breath ragged. Call's pistol glowed faintly, her expression unreadable. Marius stood in the center, smoke rising from his armor. Venom shivered against his skin, drained, trembling. We killed ourselves, it whispered softly. Feels wrong. Marius looked at the ashen remains. No. We killed what we might have become. Call approached him, her voice measured. The hive is destroyed for now. But if Xylarth can do this once, he can do it again. We need to find his source. Ellora rose, her eyes steady. Then we hunt him. Before his choir sings again. Venom's voice darkened, low and cold. Yes, it whispered. Let's find him. And this time we'll eat his song. The days that followed blurred into endless preparation and unease. The basilica above was rebuilt into a fortress, its stained glass windows replaced by iron slats, its altars surrounded by gun emplacements. Faith had turned from prayer to weaponry. Beneath it all, in the deepest vaults of the city, Marius Vallon trained. Not his body, but the fragile balance between his mind and the creature living inside it. Every hour he meditated, Venom whispered. It was learning him as much as he was learning it. Sometimes it spoke in fragments of emotion. Curiosity, hunger, strange flickers of humor. Sometimes in silence that wasn't empty but listening. The bond between them no longer felt like resistance. It felt like a conversation between predator and conscience. Call observed these sessions from behind reinforced glass, recording every flicker of psychic output. She had seen psychers lose themselves to demons, watched entire units turn to ash by the whisper of corruption. But Marius wasn't decaying. He was changing. Elora visited rarely. When she did, she stood with her helm off and her jaw set, as if facing temptation incarnate. Once, she told him, "When you stand beside me in battle, I don't know whether to thank you or fear you." Marius had smiled faintly, though his eyes were tired. "You can do both." That night, the alarms came again. Not from the rift this time, but from within the city walls. Call's agents had detected new activity in the old manufacturing district, long abandoned after the Tyranid incursion. The scanners showed movement. Hundreds of life forms clustered in patterns too deliberate for beasts. Call, Elora, and Marius gathered in the command sanctum. The Inquisitor's holodisplay flickered, showing shapes moving through the smog-choked corridors. "It's not the Tyranids," she said. "The energy readings are harmonic, the same frequency as the symbiote resonance." Venom shifted uneasily. "We feel them. They're singing wrong. They're not us. They're copies of copies." "Xylarth," Marius murmured. Call nodded. "He's still alive. And he's been busy." Elora's gauntlet clenched. "Then we end it tonight." They descended into the manufactorum, the silence so thick it drowned even the sound of their armor. Dust fell like gray snow. The once sacred forges stood in ruin, their machine spirits long cold. But as they moved deeper, faint sounds began to echo, low, rhythmic, unnatural. A chant, but not human. Marius felt it in his bones. The melody wasn't sung through mouths, but through matter. Pipes, broken walls, even the air vibrated to the same frequency. Venom recoiled. "They're calling him. They're calling us." Shapes emerged from the gloom. Bodies draped in the remnants of armor. Faces half covered by slick black flesh that pulsed to the rhythm of the song. The corrupted humans moved with insect precision, their eyes glowing with faint warp light. Elora's bolter barked once, blowing a hole through the nearest one's chest. It fell, but didn't stop singing. Its blood crawled back toward the others, threading itself into the floor. Call's auspex screamed warnings. "It's forming a network. They're merging into one system, one organism." Marius could feel the symbiote inside him writhe in protest. "It's his choir. They're bound through sound." "Then we silence it," he said. He raised his sword, venom coating the blade until it gleamed like obsidian. The first wave came fast, but not mindless. They moved together, their limbs guided by some invisible conductor. Each motion was mirrored, each step a note in a composition of violence. Bolter fire tore through them, but their flesh knit together faster than the sisters could reload. Venom screamed through Marius, its tendrils snapping out to impale three at once. The impact shattered the harmony, their song stuttering. Call seized the moment, pulling a sonic charge from her belt and tossing it into the midst of the swarm. It detonated with a dull, resonant thud. For a heartbeat, all sound vanished. Then the creatures convulsed, their skulls splitting under the vibration. The silence afterward was worse. Marius's ears rang with more than just pain. He could feel the echo of their chant still reverberating through the floor, and deep beneath, something answered. The walls trembled. Metal groaned as the floor split, revealing a pit below, filled with writhing shapes, hundreds of them, all fused into a massive cocoon of flesh and machine parts. In its center, suspended by living cables, was Xylarth. His armor was gone, replaced by a carapace of black and crimson symbiote matter. His voice emerged from everywhere at once, cold and triumphant. "You can't destroy the song," he said. "It's part of the warp now. Even your prayers have rhythm. Even your faith sings." Venom snarled, a sound like thunder breaking inside Marius's chest. "He stole our voice." Marius leapt down before Call or Elora could stop him. The moment his boots hit the cocoon floor, he felt 1,000 minds reach for his, clawing, singing, pulling. Xylarth smiled as veins of black light spread across the chamber. "You think it obeys you?" The sorcerer hissed. "It obeys hunger. And I have taught it a better song." Marius's head filled with noise. Venom fought, biting through psychic chains that tried to bind them both. "He wants us to join. He wants a choir of gods. Then we sing alone." Marius shouted, slamming his sword into the floor. The symbiote flowed through him, out of him, flooding the cocoon in a surge of black flame. The voices screamed as Venom's essence tore through them, shredding the shared network. Elora's choir above began their battle hymn, the pure harmony burning through the noise like sunlight through fog. Call triggered the resonator prototype she'd brought, its mechanical drone aligning with the hymn's tone. The hybrid frequencies struck the chamber like twin blades. Xylartha's scream rattled the catacombs. "You can't kill what already exists in every voice, every echo." Venom's growl deepened. "Watch us." Marius drove his sword into the sorcerer's chest, channeling the psychic resonance through the symbiote's core. The explosion was silent, light folding inward before vanishing entirely. When the dust settled, the cocoon was gone, the pit empty. Call's voice crackled through the comms. "Valen, report." Marius climbed out, his armor smoking, Venom sluggish and whispering weakly. "It's done. The choir is gone." Elora met him with wary eyes. "At what cost?" Venom murmured almost tenderly. "We lost part of ourselves. But we kept you." Marius didn't answer. He looked toward the faint glow on the horizon, the rift still pulsing like a heartbeat. The battle had ended, but the war was far from over. Call followed his gaze. "He was only an echo," she said quietly. "Whatever's on the other side of that breach, it's still calling." Venom's voice curled around Marius's thoughts, low and grim. "Then we'll answer. Together." The manufactorum's silence lingered long after the battle ended. Every shadow seemed alive, humming faintly with echoes of the corrupted choir that had almost consumed the world below. The smell of burning promethium hung heavy in the air, mixing with the faint ozone crackle of still-active power lines. Above ground, the shrine world was trying to rebuild, but beneath it, war was evolving. Inquisitor Call stood before a large relic table covered in fragments of black residue, symbiote tissue that pulsed weakly even after being separated. Tech Priest Dominus Hecron 9 hovered over it, his mechanical limbs clicking with devotion as he adjusted the containment seals. "This one sings," he said in his monotone, the mechanical pitch vibrating through the air. "Even severed, it still remembers harmony." Call folded her arms, eyes narrowed. "Then amplify it." Marius entered the chamber silently, the symbiote coiling around his shoulders like a cloak that never stopped breathing. "You're toying with it again," he said. Hecron 9 turned, several lenses adjusting their focus. "Not toying. Understanding. Knowledge is the Emperor's blade, Brother Valen." Venom's voice rolled through Marius's head, amused. "He wants to build something. We can smell it. Metal and prayers and fear." Call gestured toward the relics. "He's building us a weapon. A resonant device to counteract the symbiote's frequencies. A sonic resonator." Marius frowned. "You think you can destroy a living frequency with a machine?" "Not destroy," Hecron 9 corrected. "Balance. Sing louder than the chaos does." The words lingered. Marius felt Venom shift uneasily, the symbiote's instinct warning of pain it couldn't yet name. "We don't like songs. Songs hurt." Call stepped closer, lowering her voice. "If it works, we can neutralize Xylartha's infection wherever it spreads. You'll field test it." Elora entered just then, helmet under one arm, her expression unreadable. "And if it doesn't work?" Call smiled faintly. "Then Brother Valen will let us know." Briefly. The test was set for dusk. The resonator, a construct of whirring gears and crystal amplifiers, was placed at the edge of the outer ruins. Marius stood before it in his full armor, Venom restless under his skin. Elora and a squad of sisters formed a perimeter, their hymnals ready to reinforce the sound if needed. Hecron 9's mechanical voice crackled over the comms, activating harmonic pulse in 3, 2. The air screamed. The first wave of resonance hit like a hammer to the chest. Marius staggered, venom erupting in defensive spikes that shimmered across his armor. The sound wasn't just heard, it was felt, deep in the bones, shaking thought and soul. He fell to one knee, the black sheen across his body flickering like fire. Elora shouted orders, her voice drowned in the mechanical roar. Call stood unmoved, watching every twitch with clinical fascination. Inside his mind, Marius could feel venom thrashing. "Stop it. Stop. It kills us. It kills you." He gritted his teeth, forcing his voice through the storm. Hecron shut it down. "Data incomplete," came the detached response. "Fascinating resonance decay rate." Hecron. The machine whined higher, its light turning from gold to blinding white. Elora's hymns rose in desperation, trying to counter the resonance with holy sound. The two frequencies collided, a war of faith and science, each trying to erase the other. And then something broke. A shock wave burst outward, hurling debris and soldiers alike. The resonator shattered, its crystal core melting into slag. When the dust cleared, Marius lay in the center of the blast crater, motionless. His armor smoked. Elora rushed to him, pulling at his helm. "Marius!" For a terrible moment, nothing. Then the armor shuddered, and venom spoke through him, weak and ragged. "Still here." "Ow." Marius exhaled sharply, rolling onto his side. "You nearly killed us all," he said hoarsely. Call approached slowly, her expression unreadable. "And yet you lived. Proof of concept." Elora turned on her, fury in her eyes. "You call this a success? He's bleeding from the soul." Call didn't flinch. "If this can burn the infection from an entire world, one life is not yours to gamble," Marius cut in, his voice cold. He rose to his feet, venom's black tendrils crawling up his arm, forming jagged edges like broken glass. "We are not your weapon, Inquisitor. You forget, this thing learns. Every pain you inflict, it remembers." Venom growled softly, words dripping with venomous humor. "And we hold grudges." Call didn't respond. She only turned to Hecron. "Refine the frequencies. Next trial, smaller range, higher purity." When she left, Elora lingered. The sunset burned red across the ruins, the light falling through broken spires like blood on glass. "She's going to break you," she said quietly. "And she won't stop until she gets what she wants." Marius watched the horizon where the rift pulsed faintly, always there, always growing. "Then we stop her before that happens. Because she's right about one thing, the sound works. If she perfects it, she'll have a weapon to kill not just Venom, but anything like him." Venom shifted, murmuring lowly. "She'll kill all our kind, even the ones that haven't fallen yet." Marius nodded slowly. "Which means she's aiming at more than just chaos." A low rumble shook the earth. Both turned toward the sound. Across the plain, black lightning clawed the clouds. Call's command outpost flared red as alarms erupted. Elora's Vox hissed to life, reports of Tyranid contact on multiple fronts. But Marius felt it before the words reached him. The hive had changed. The symbiote within him recoiled as if smelling poison. "They're singing again," Venom whispered. "But this time, it's not chaos." The Tyranids were no longer just consuming. They were calling. And the voice they sang with was the same frequency that had almost destroyed him. The resonance call had just unleashed upon the world. Somewhere far above the atmosphere, the hive mind had heard the song of man and machine, and was now singing back. The night came alive with screaming skies. From orbit, the Tyranid spores fell like black rain, streaking fire across the wounded heavens. The rift pulsed behind the storm clouds, widening with every beat, spilling colors that didn't belong in nature. The shrine world trembled under its own prayers. The faithful barricaded themselves inside sanctuaries that no longer felt holy, whispering hymns drowned out by the sound of distant explosions. Marius Valen stood on the parapet of the fortress basilica, armor gleaming in the flicker of burning cities beyond. Venom rippled uneasily under his skin, reacting to the distant psychic hum that was building in the air, a deep, resonant frequency that tasted like poison. They learned the song, Venom murmured, its voice quieter than usual. The bugs, they sing it now. They use your machine's music. Marius's jaw tightened. The resonator. Call joined him, her face lit by the glow of tactical holomaps. Confirmed. The Tyranids are mimicking the resonance pattern we generated during the test. But it's not just imitation, it's amplification. Elora approached, helm under one arm, her expression grim. They're using the Emperor's own light against us. Call gave her a look that could have cut stone. They're using my weapon, which means they can be outsung. Marius turned to her sharply. If you try another pulse, you'll kill every living thing within a kilometer. Call didn't blink. Then we narrow the range. We'll focus the signal inside the basilica itself. If we can retune the resonator core, we might drown their network long enough to sever the hive's link. Elora's voice rose. You'll turn the holiest place on this planet into a weapon? Call looked out across the burning horizon. It's already a battlefield. The command deck fell silent, save for the thunder of distant bombardments. The war had begun. Hours later, the Basilica of St. Helius had become an engine of war. Choir stalls were replaced with power relays. The great altar was torn open to make room for the resonator core, now reforged by Hecron 9 and his priesthood. The candles were replaced by plasma conduits that glowed with eerie blue light. Even the saints carved into the walls seemed to weep beneath the weight of what was coming. Marius stood at the base of the altar, Venom shifting across his armor like a living shadow. Elora moved among her sisters, organizing the defense lines. Call and Hecron worked beside the resonator, tuning its frequency while chanting mechanical hymns. The low hum began again, rising steadily until it matched the faint vibration in the air, the song of the approaching swarm. Then the Tyranids came. The horizon broke like an ocean wave, spilling thousands of chitinous forms across the plains. Carnifexes thundered through the ruins, gaunts swarming ahead in endless waves. And above them, something new, massive winged creatures whose bodies pulsed with glowing veins of black symbiote matter. Their roars carried the resonance Call had created, each one a dissonant echo of human invention. Marius stepped forward, gripping his sword. They're broadcasting the frequency through their flesh. Venom hissed. They stole our song and made it their hunger. Call's voice came through the vox. Hold them until the resonator reaches full sync. Once we activate it, the pulse will tear through their hive link. Elora gave a short nod. And what about us? Call's silence was answer enough. The swarm hit the first defensive line with the sound of metal being torn apart. The sisters fired from the ramparts, their hymns mixing with the roar of bolters. Marius leapt into the fray, Venom erupting into a mass of tendrils that tore through the first wave like paper. Each movement was instinctive now, no longer host and parasite, but a single will born of faith and fury. Left, Venom growled and Marius spun, cutting through a leaping lictor before it landed. The symbiote fed off adrenaline, its laughter echoing in his thoughts. We're getting good at this. Focus, he barked, driving his blade through another. There's no victory in madness. But even he could feel the strain. The air vibrated with the swarm's chorus, the resonance crawling through his armor, under his skin into his skull. Venom screamed as the frequency aligned perfectly with its essence. Make it stop. It's killing us. Call's voice crackled through the comms. 30 seconds to full charge. Elora's choir sang louder, their hymn rising to counter the alien song. The holy resonance cut through the battlefield like light through shadow, and for a moment the Tyranids faltered. Marius seized the chance, carving through their ranks until his sword cracked with heat. Then, from the storm clouds, the largest of them descended. A creature taller than any tank, its wings stretched wide, body coated in symbiote black armor that rippled like oil. Its head was crowned with psychic spines that hummed in harmony with the resonator. It landed before the basilica gates, each step shaking the ground. Venom's voice went cold. "That's not a tyrannid. That's us." The creature's chest opened like a flower of bone, revealing a face embedded in its flesh, a twisted echo of Xylarth. His voice came from its throat and the air itself. "You cannot silence the song. You are part of it." Marius charged, Venom roaring with him. They collided with the hybrid beast in an explosion of sound and energy. The ground split beneath them, stone melting into glass. The creature struck with claws that sang, each blow harmonizing with the resonator's hum. Venom countered, reshaping Marius's armor into blades, wings, teeth, anything that could cut through the music. Call's voice rang out. Now. The resonator activated. The basilica screamed. The pulse ripped through the air, visible as waves of blue light that shattered glass and bone alike. The tyrannids convulsed, their screams harmonizing into a single unbearable note. Venom howled inside Marius, every nerve burning. "It's killing us! It's killing us!" "Hold on," he shouted. "If we stop now, it's over." Ellora's choir fell one by one, their voices breaking under the force of the sound. Call stood at the controls, her eyes bleeding, refusing to stop the pulse. The hybrid beast staggered, its body fracturing into shards of black fire. Marius drove his sword through its heart as the resonator hit its final frequency. A blinding flash consumed everything. When the light faded, silence fell across the battlefield. The swarm was gone, burned to ash. The basilica stood cracked but unbroken. Call knelt beside the shattered resonator, breathing heavily, her coat torn and smoldering. Ellora crawled to her feet, her armor scorched. You did it." Marius staggered forward, Venom limp and quiet. "No," he said, voice hollow. "We only muted it." Above them, the rift pulsed once, twice, then flared open wider than ever before. From within, a sound rolled across the heavens. Deeper, older, hungry. Venom stirred weakly inside him. "We woke it up." Call looked to the sky, eyes wide with awe and terror. "Then this isn't the end." Marius's grip tightened on his sword. "No," he said softly. "This is the beginning." The air above Gethsemane Delta had turned crimson. Lightning forked across the clouds, painting the sky with veins of living fire. The rift was no longer a wound, it was an open mouth, and something vast and ancient was breathing through it. From its edges poured shapes that defied gravity and reason, shadows that flickered in and out of existence like broken thoughts. The resonance pulse had silenced the tyrannid swarm, but it had also done something far worse. It had called attention. Marius Valens stood among the ruins of the basilica, its towers half melted, the once holy ground littered with the remains of heroes and monsters alike. His armor was cracked, the black sheen of venom shifting sluggishly, wounded by the harmonic assault. Every breath felt like fire. Ellora and her surviving sisters gathered around the fallen altar, tending to the wounded. Call oversaw the reconstruction of the resonator core, her mind fixed not on grief, but on purpose. "The rift is growing," Hecron 9 reported, his vox distorted by static. "At current rate of expansion, atmospheric collapse in 16 hours. Call didn't look up. "We'll be gone before then. If we can get the resonator back online, we can use it to stabilize the breach." Ellora glared at her. "You mean to weaponize it again?" Call's tone was cold as stone. "Semantics." Marius moved to the edge of the shattered steps, gazing into the churning sky. He could feel the pull of the warp, seductive, endless. And deeper still, beneath the chaos, a whisper that wasn't quite sound. It was familiar, hungry, calling his name. "We hear it too," Venom murmured weakly. "It wants us back. It thinks we're its child." "What is it?" Marius asked quietly. Venom hesitated. "Before you. Before this world. We came from that. The dark between the stars. The first hunger. The song that eats light. The realization sank into him like a blade. The symbiote was not from another galaxy. It was from the warp itself. A living echo of its chaos, shaped by chance, tempered by contact with life, but still a fragment of that endless void. Call approached, her boots crunching over broken glass. The rift is responding to you, Valen. To it. Whatever's coming through, it's drawn to your bond. Ella returned, her voice sharp. Then we destroy the bond. Marius faced her, eyes burning faintly beneath his helm. You think I haven't considered it? But if I die, this thing doesn't end. It goes free. Call interjected. Then we use you. You enter the breach, anchor the resonator's core, and trigger the stabilization sequence from inside. Ellara's eyes widened. That's suicide. Call didn't blink. It's strategy. Venom stirred, more awake now, its voice coiling through Marius's mind like smoke. We like her. Cold. Honest. Marius exhaled slowly. If I do this and it fails, everything ends. You understand that. Call met his gaze. Then don't fail. Preparations began at once. The surviving Mechanicus units worked to rebuild the resonator into a portable device, no larger than a man's torso, its power source thrumming with unstable light. Ellara's sisters armed themselves for what everyone knew was a one-way mission. Hymns echoed through the ruined basilica as they sang blessings over the dying and the damned. Before the descent, Ellara approached Marius in the silence of the relic vault. If you fall to the warp, she said, I will not pray for your soul. I will burn your name so it cannot return. He gave a faint, tired smile. That's faith I can respect. Venom chuckled softly inside him. She means it. I know, he whispered. They ascended to the highest spire, where the rift churned just above the atmosphere, a tear of impossible light stretching from horizon to horizon. Dropships hovered nearby, engines howling against the wind. Call stood beside the resonator's core, now sealed in a reinforced cradle. You'll have 10 minutes once you enter, she said. After that, even if you succeed, there won't be enough energy left to bring you back. Then 10 minutes is enough. Ellara stepped forward, her hand resting briefly on his arm. May the Emperor guard your soul. Venom's voice rumbled like distant thunder. We don't need a god. We have each other. And with that they leapt. The world vanished into blinding red. The warp was not space. It was thought and emotion and nightmare made flesh. Marius fell through it like a man falling through a dream, surrounded by whispers that knew his name and every secret he had ever buried. Shapes flickered in the void, angels and monsters, sometimes both at once. Venom clung to him, its presence a constant anchor. Don't listen to them, it hissed. They're lies that think they're songs. Ahead, through the maelstrom, he saw it, a vast heart of darkness, pulsing in rhythm with the rift. Every beat sent shockwaves through reality. It was alive, aware, and it saw him. Marius Valen, it whispered, 1,000 voices speaking as one. Return to us. You are our lost fragment. Our voice. Our hunger. Venom writhed, half in pain, half in yearning. It's the source. The first of us. The thing that sang us into being. Marius raised the resonator core, its light flickering in the void. Then let's end the song. The entity's laughter filled the warp, a sound so vast it broke thought. End. Foolish child. You can't silence hunger. You can only feed it. The dark tide surged forward, claws of liquid shadow reaching for him. Venom roared, wrapping around Marius, forming armor within armor. We are not your child anymore. The core began to glow brighter, its pulse matching the creature's rhythm. The resonance built, shaking the very fabric of the warp. The entity screamed, not in pain but fury. You would kill yourself to defy me? You are me. Marius pressed his gauntlet against the device, forcing his will through it. No, he said, voice steady. We're what you could never be, choice. The resonator detonated. Light swallowed the void. For one impossible moment, Marius felt everything. The warp, the Imperium, the endless scream of dying stars, and then silence. Venom's voice whispered faintly through the fading light. We're not dying. We're changing. Then nothing. Back on Gethsemane Delta, the rift imploded in a blaze of light that turned night into day. Call and Elora watched from the shattered walls as the sky sealed shut, leaving only silence in its wake. He did it, Elora said softly. Call didn't reply. She was staring at the data feed on her wrist, readings from the resonator still active. The signal hadn't vanished. It had moved. Far away, in the cold of space between stars, a new heartbeat echoed, steady, human, and not entirely alone. The world was quiet again. For the first time in weeks, no alarm sounded. No hymns of desperation filled the air. The skies over Gethsemane Delta were whole. Scarred, yes, but whole. The rift was gone, sealed like a wound that might never heal properly but had finally stopped bleeding. The survivors called it a miracle. The priests called it divine intervention. Inquisitor Call called it data. The basilica lay in ruins, its towers broken like the ribs of a fallen god. The marble floors were scorched, the relics half melted, the saints on the walls disfigured by smoke. Yet amidst the ruin, life returned. Servitors cleared debris. The faithful rebuilt what they could. Elora led her sisters in prayer at the cracked altar, their voices soft, tired, but unbroken. Call stood apart, at the edge of the courtyard, watching the horizon. Her servoskull hovered at her shoulder, recording. 17% atmospheric restoration, it reported. Residual warp energy negligible. She ignored it. Her eyes were fixed on the sky, where faint traces of aurora still shimmered, echoes of what had happened. She could still hear it sometimes, faintly when the wind shifted, the ghost of a heartbeat in the static. Marius Valen's heartbeat. He's gone, Elora said behind her. Her voice was low, raw. Whatever was left of him died sealing the rift. Call didn't look back. That's the story we'll tell the ecclesiarchy. They prefer martyrs to survivors. Elora's tone hardened. You can't mean. Call turned. He's not dead, Canoness. He's out there. I can feel it. Elora's hand went to the hilt of her sword. If what's out there is still him. Call smiled faintly. Then we'll find out. The data logs told a different story than Faith did. The resonator hadn't simply released its energy and vanished. It had transmitted. The final pulse had carried a signal, a harmonic signature identical to Marius Valen's biometrics, fused with a new waveform. It wasn't warp energy. It was something else, something stable. Something alive. Weeks passed. Reconstruction spread across the city like cautious hope. The basilica became a fortress once more, its banners stitched from the ashes of the old ones. Pilgrims began to return, whispering legends of the black-armored warrior who had sealed the rift with his own soul. They called him the Shadow Saint. The ecclesiarchy hated the name but couldn't stop the spread. Stories have a way of surviving even when their heroes do not. One evening, as the twin moons rose, Elora led a patrol beyond the outer walls. The landscape was quiet. Ashen plains stretching to the horizon, bones of old battles half buried beneath the dust. The wind was cold but clean. That's when they heard it. Screams. Not human. Elora signaled her squad to advance. The sound came from the ravine ahead. They moved through the darkness, weapons ready, until the glow of Tyrannid ichor flickered in the distance. A small convoy of pilgrims had been ambushed, their transport overturned. The air stank of acid and burning flesh. A handful of the alien creatures still fed on the corpses, their chittering echoing off the rocks. Elora raised her hand. Purge them. Bolters barked. The first wave of creatures fell, but one, a genestealer larger than the rest, lunged from the shadows, catching a sister mid-stride. It dragged her to the ground, claws raised for the kill. Elora fired, but she was too far. Then the night itself moved. A black shape dropped from the cliffside like liquid shadow. It hit the genestealer with the force of a meteor, tearing through chitin and bone. The alien screamed, silenced instantly as its head was crushed in a single blow. The sisters froze. The figure stood over the corpse, its armor sleek and black, pulsing faintly with dark veins that shimmered under the moonlight. A long, jagged blade hung at its side, coated in alien blood. For a moment it said nothing. Then it turned its head, eyes glowing faint white. Elora whispered, "Emperor, protect us." The figure tilted its head, as if amused. Its voice was deep, familiar, and doubled. One tone human, one otherworldly. He already did. She lowered her weapon slowly. "Marius." He stepped closer, and for a heartbeat she could see the man she had known, the ultramarine stance, the discipline in his movement. But there was something else now, something vast behind his eyes. The symbiote no longer moved like a separate thing. It was him. They were one. Venom's voice echoed softly, almost reverent. "We came back. The song couldn't keep us." Elora stared. "You survived." "Survival," Marius said, looking toward the stars, "isn't the word. We became something else. The warp tried to take us. We learned to breathe in it instead." Call's voice came through Elora's vox, crackling with urgency. "Report. Canonus. What's your status?" Elora hesitated. "You'll want to see this yourself." Hours later, in the ruins of the basilica's courtyard, Marius stood before Call. The Inquisitor's composure faltered for the first time in her career. "You should be dead." He smiled faintly. "I was. For a moment." "You understand what this means," she said quietly. "You're proof. A living weapon that survived the warp and came back uncorrupted." Venom laughed softly through him. "Uncorrupted is a generous word." Call stepped closer. "You could end entire wars. You could—" "No," Marius interrupted. "I'm done being a weapon." He turned, looking up at the dawn breaking over the ruins. "We'll fight, yes. But on our own terms. We'll be what the Imperium can't, what it's forgotten how to be." Elora watched him, torn between awe and fear. "And what is that?" He looked at her, and for the first time since the rift, his eyes were calm. "Mercy." The wind rose, carrying the faint scent of smoke and steel. Somewhere beyond the horizon, the stars pulsed faintly, whispering to one another in voices only the warp could hear. A storm was coming, distant yet inevitable, but for now, Gethsemane Delta breathed in fragile peace. Marius walked toward the dawn, his shadow stretching long behind him, the voice of Venom low and certain in his mind. "We protect the weak." He nodded once. "Always." And together they vanished into the light.